Welcome back. If you are new here, hi, I am your host, Trudian, and today I have a special guest with me. She is my dear friend Zara. She is the first student I met at university when I came to Canada. Thank you, Zara, for joining us to talk about your experiences. Zara is an international student in Canada who has been living here for 2 years and studies biology in university. Today, Zahrah will be walking us through her journey of traveling to Canada and share with us some of the advantages and disadvantages of living in Canada. If you would like to travel to Canada like Zahrah and I, but have questions about the process to do so, you can email me at growwithtp@gmail.com. The link will be in the description box below. There are so many reasons why different students travel to Canada. I traveled to Canada because I heard a lot about Canada wanting skilled workers and the country is underpopulated, so I wanted to see what it was like here. I will be starting off this episode by asking our guests, why did you want to travel to Canada?
Intention to pursue my post-secondary studies abroad, but there were a few countries that I had to choose from. The 4 countries at the top of my list were Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. And I believe these 4 countries are among the top destinations, not only among students from my home country of Mauritius, but also globally. For me, the most important factor when I had to make a choice about where to study was affordability. When compared to the tuition fees that international students pay, especially in the United States and the United Kingdom, tuition fee for international students in Canada is relatively cheaper. Another important factor was the opportunity to work as a student in Canada. International students are allowed to work part-time for 20 hours per week while studying and can work full-time during the summer and during mid-semester breaks. Some other reasons why I chose to study in Canada are the high quality of education, but also the good quality of life here. Generally speaking, Canada is one of the safest nations in the world and one of the most peaceful countries globally. Most people I have met here on the island, and I believe that's the same for you as well, Trudy. Most people we have met are very welcoming and very nice people.
Yeah, definitely.
And there is a lot of cultural diversity too. I have been in Canada, as Trudy mentioned, for more than 2 years now, and I have met people from so many different countries, and I love this diversity. It is very wonderful. And I would like to add that the opportunity to work after my post-secondary studies and to stay permanently in Canada and later become a Canadian citizen are certainly among the main reasons why I chose to study here.
Perfect. What I would like to highlight when it comes to what Zahrah just said is that when it comes to working in Canada or just studying in Canada, you get the opportunity to work part-time and work full-time during the academic breaks, which is an advantage for studying in Canada as well. So the next question I have is, what was your thought process of deciding you would like to travel to Canada? Did you use an agent? If yes, why did you? Or if no, why not?
Okay, so once I knew I wanted to study in Canada, I did contact a well-known agent in my home country. So this agent helps students with their university applications and student visa for free. I believe the agent I used is affiliated to many universities and colleges in Canada, and I assume that's perhaps the universities that pay them directly, and therefore I had nothing to pay. I know I could have done everything on my own, applying for university, getting my acceptance letter, and then applying for the student visa. However, I thought it would be wiser to contact an agent since they are quite familiar with all the paperwork needed before coming to Canada. I also wanted to make sure that my visa application would not be rejected just because I have missed a document or something else, and that's why I did use an agent.
Perfect. That makes so much sense. So, what was your process like getting your student visa and your study permit?
I remember I first applied for my acceptance letter from the University of Prince Edward Island at the beginning of September 2019, and I got the acceptance letter in less than 24 hours. So once I had the acceptance letter, it took me around 1 week or so to gather and fill out all the other paperwork documents I had to submit to the Consulate of Canada in Mauritius for my student visa. I wrote all the letters, filled out all the application forms, and gathered all the documents that IRCC, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, needed. The agent I used just made sure I was submitting everything required. I recall submitting my visa application in early September 2019 and receiving my visa in mid-December 2019. So it took me around 3 months and a half before receiving my student visa.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that's a lot, but however, it's important to note that this waiting period between submitting the visa application and receiving your student visa is highly variable. I know for some students who have received their visas in around 1 month or 1 month and a half, but for others it can take longer, 2 months, 3 months, or even 3 months and a half, like me. Trudy, how long did it take for you to receive your student visa?
So my student visa processing time was 6 weeks. So when I checked the processing time, because you can check your processing time, and if you are someone that is currently applying for your student visa, you can go on the website and check the processing time of your application to see how long it is. And for me, it was 6 weeks, and I got it exactly 6 weeks. And I thought that the processing time did not include getting my passport and the stamp, but the processing time of 6 weeks included everything. Of course, when it comes to COVID and all of that, the processing time, even though, for example, if you were to go on the website and it said the processing time is 6 weeks, maybe it's a case where you'll maybe not get it exactly 6 weeks at this time. But pre-COVID, I was able to get everything, get the study permit, get the stamp in my passport, and everything exactly 6 weeks.
Okay, so yes, that's why I wanted to point this out, that it's highly variable. For me, it took 3 months and a half, but for Trudy, it took 6 weeks, so it's very variable. So I received my passport back with my visa stamped in mid-December 2019. I took the plane on December 20th, and I was in Canada on the 21st of December. But you don't receive your study permit until you are at the airport in Canada and you go through the Canada Border Services Agency. The day I arrived in Canada, that's a funny story, but the day I arrived in Canada, there were many international students who also landed around the same time, and I had to wait for 8 hours at the airport in Toronto before obtaining my study permit. I know that's a lot, but again, the waiting period varies from day to day, but fortunately most of my friends, and I think that's the same for you as well, Trudy, they did not have to wait as much as I did to get their study permit. I know for some of my friends it took them on average 30 minutes to 1 hour to get their study permit.
Well, honestly for me, when I arrived to Canada, it was New Year's Day. So a lot of persons were not traveling on New Year's Day. So when I went there, it was just 3 persons in front of me at the border agency to collect the study permit. So definitely when it comes to getting your study permit, you do get it at the Canadian border, but you do get an introduction letter while you are in your home country. That is an introduction letter saying that you should receive your study permit, or well, you may receive your study permit at the border once you have complied with all the regulations.
Yes, and I wanted to add that for those who are listening and who want to travel to Canada for their studies, they should bring this letter as well as any paperwork with them. do not put it in your luggage, but put it in your backpack or handbag, as well as your bank statements, because very often the agents, the officers at the Canada Border Services Agency, they ask for this, even for your lease agreement.
Yes, it is very important to keep each and every document that you are traveling with in your personal luggage. Every document. Do not place any form of document in your luggage that will be checked in. So the next question that I would like to ask you, Zahrah, is how were you able to finance your studies in Canada?
So I am very grateful that I was fortunate to receive a scholarship from the government of my home country to pursue my tertiary studies abroad. So the scholarship I received covers around 70% of my tuition fee for the 4 years of my undergraduate degree. So I work part-time during the fall and winter semesters and full-time during the summer to cover the remaining cost of my tuition fees and to pay for my living expenses.
That is so wonderful. So when it comes to getting that scholarship, was there any process that you had to go through to get the scholarship?
I was automatically eligible for this because this scholarship is given on a merit basis, merit and social basis, but it's very much about your grades.
Okay, that's wonderful. And you did say that you are working to cover 30% of your tuition.
Yes, and my living expenses too.
That's wonderful, because when it comes to covering living expenses and tuition in Canada, it can be extremely difficult. When it comes to even considering accommodation and renting by itself to get a decent apartment is about $800 if you want to stay in an apartment that is fully self-contained. That means you have your own washroom and your own kitchen and then the bedroom area. And that is just for us in PEI, Prince Edward Island. When you're considering places outside of PEI, it is way more expensive.
Yes.
So it is also important to consider cost of living, especially if this is something you will have to cover while living in Canada. So Zahrah, did Canada live up to your expectations?
That's a good question. I think in many ways it did. I have spent most of my time in Canada on Prince Edward Island, so I can only speak for PEI but not the other provinces. Again, as I mentioned before, most people I've met here, not only at university but everywhere I have been on the island, are very polite, welcoming, warm and generous. Canada's multicultural policy, it is not perfect, but I believe can be considered as a successful multicultural society in the West, but in other ways it did not. For instance, inequality exists in every society, and Canada is not immune from this. There is also a big housing problem in Charlottetown. It is increasingly harder to find a decent place to live at a reasonable price for students, and that's not only in Charlottetown but in some other Canadian cities in other provinces too. But ultimately, when I weigh the pros and cons of living in Canada, I personally feel the benefits of living here far outweigh the challenges you will encounter.
So was there any time that you felt that you regret traveling to Canada?
I have honestly never felt that way. You know, there are always ups and downs, but that's the very nature of life. But I have never regretted traveling to Canada, and I believe coming to Canada to continue my academic and professional career is certainly one of the best decisions I have made.
Amazing. Well, you said that you didn't have any regrets. What do you think about the weather?
That's a great question. I won't lie, but the weather is definitely one of the biggest challenges I have faced, especially because I come from a very warm climate. So my home country of Mauritius is a tropical island. It is a very warm country and it does not snow there. I first arrived in Canada during the winter and it was hard to adjust at the beginning. my body was not yet used to the cold, so it took me some time for my body to adjust to the cold winter. Funny anecdote, when I first arrived in Canada in late December, that's during the winter, my body was never used to this cold and my nose started to bleed and my gum and teeth were so sensitive that I could barely eat anything during the first few days. But then after around 3 to 4 days, it started getting better. And now, thankfully, I no longer suffer from this during the winter. But one advice I would give those who are listening and who will come to Canada, especially during the winter, is to buy a good winter coat, boots and gloves. And also, I think the key to staying warm during the winter here is to wear layers of clothing. I find that layering your clothes does help to stay warm.
Yes, definitely. Wow, it's so shocking to hear what you've been through with the weather. I mean, for me, I'll say I was lucky. I mean, I came here during the winter as well, but I did not experience anything severe. And to be quite frank, at some points I was warm.
But how cold does it get in Jamaica?
Maybe 26 degrees, maybe. And now I'm in a temperature of negative 20. I think the coldest that I've been here is negative 28. And in Alberta and some other provinces, the temperature dropped to like negative 30 and negative 40.
Yes.
I wonder, how do they survive? I mean, when it comes to the cold and surviving the temperature, it's really about the clothes that you wear and the way in which you layer. Before I came to Canada, I did a lot of research when it comes to just finding out how to dress for the weather, because I found that extremely important to know what it was like, because I did not know what it was like layering. I did not know what I was supposed to do. I didn't even know there was such thing as layering before. It's really about researching, because I did the research and then I heard that I need to have scarf and boots and hats and gloves, and it was just a lot. So that is really what I did when it comes to being able to feel warm at some points during the winter. So kind of a follow-up question to the one above, what would you say were the most challenging parts of traveling to Canada other than the weather?
So at the beginning, after leaving your home country and coming here alone, it is common for some students to feel homesick. For many of us, it is the first time we are away from our parents, siblings, close friends, and loved ones. And it might also be the first time you are entirely on your own. This aspect of being completely independent, from living alone to paying your bills, doing groceries, preparing your own food, can be challenging at the start for some students, especially if your parents were the ones doing all of these before. But with time, you get used to it and it definitely gets easier. You become better at managing your time, at planning and organizing everything. I believe what does help is to remind yourself why you have left your home country to come to Canada. And it's really about remaining focused on your goals. And I realized that everything ultimately falls into place. You just need to keep going and stay optimistic.
So just moving from that challenging part of Canada, let's talk about 3 big wins you've had in Canada. 3 things that stood out to you while being in Canada.
That's a great question. Perhaps one of the most important things that I already knew but did not quite fully understand and realize is that everything, literally everything in this world is temporary. And it's only when you fully comprehend the impermanence of everything that you learn not to get attached to things. I have learned to value impermanence. I have learned to cherish every moment with everyone and to live in the present. The second thing I have learned is that living alone, figuring out everything on your own, and being independent help you grow on so many different things about myself and about who I truly am during the past 2 years I have been here. I have been studying and living here. And the last thing I have learned is to stay calm in the face of any challenges. There are a billion things that you've never done before and that you will encounter for the first time now, and you will certainly face all types of challenges. But it's crucial to realize that life has constantly been changing and will continue and changing. We do not always have control over the events, but we definitely have control over how we react to things or how we react to events and the actions we take. So once you step out of your comfort zone and face any challenge life throws at you with humility, you realize how liberating it feels to embrace anything with a smile.
Definitely. That is so inspiring. We will be continuing to talk about her studies in Canada and everything in our next episode. So please stay tuned for that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.